Good morning, everybody. I'd like to welcome everybody to our March Economic Development meeting. Today, we will be discussing website compliance with Glenn Ingram from Web Search Pros. However, before we get going, I'd like to explain why my face is in front of the camera and not our CEO and president, Mr. James Roten. JR welcomed his third grandchild this morning at about a little after 4 a.m. out in Colorado. It's his first grandson, aptly named James, and JR didn't sleep much last night, so he is not going to be joining us. He's listening in, and as a reminder to everyone, we are recording this webinar this morning. It will be available on the Chamber's YouTube channel, as well as on our website under the News tab for our virtual Zoom library. So congratulations, JR and family, and then thank you all for joining us this morning. I'd like to start off by welcoming Mr. Glenn Ingram. Glenn is the owner and founder of Web Search Pros. Web Search Pros specializes in web design, accessibility, optimization, and reputation marketing. Glenn's been a leader in this field for a number of years. He's worked in sales, marketing, and advertising for 20 years, and really knows a lot about what we should all know when it comes to website compliance and exactly what that means and how it affects us specifically here in California. So welcome, Glenn, to our economic development meeting. Thanks for joining us, and we're anxious to hear what you have to say.
Well, thanks for inviting me. Thanks for letting me share. Accessibility is becoming paramount in California. So I'm going to share some slides with you. Anyone that would like these slides afterwards, I'd be happy to share them with them. So don't feel like you need to take copious notes or you take screenshots of these. So you see my screen now?
Yeah, I sure do. And I would like to mention to everybody, we will be taking questions in the chat room and in the Q&A section of the webinar down below. Please put those in the chat room. We will address those as they come in, but we will try not to distract too much from Glenn's presentation. So he'll be taking those perhaps as they come in. If not, we'll do that at the end.
All right, well, why are we talking about website accessibility in 2021? Well, this started back in 2010 at the anniversary of the original Americans with Disabilities Act at a ceremony in Washington, D.C., where President Obama suggested that the Americans with Disabilities Act should be extended to and include websites, videos, apps, and digital properties. In 2016, a blind man in California sued Domino's for not being able to order a pizza. In 2017, California laws under the Unruh Act, sections 51 and 52, made it discrimination for a website not to work properly for someone with disabilities. Now, we're bouncing back and forth a little bit, and there'll be reasons why we're going to tie this together here in a moment. In December of 2017, a federal judge in the Ninth Circuit dismissed the case against Domino's where the blind person or the gentleman with vision impairment sued them. In January of 2019, the U.S. Court of Appeals overturned that dismissal, and they stated that a website is an extension of your physical business or acts in place of one. In October of 2019, the U.S. Supreme Court denied hearing the argument from Domino's to overturn the appellate court's decision, and in their opinion paper agreed with the Ninth Circuit Court that a website should be an extension of your physical business or act in lieu of one. The reason why this is so important nationwide, more so than in California, is there were different circuit courts that had different varying opinions on whether a website is actually covered under the Americans with Disabilities Act, Title III, which covers physical accommodations or businesses. When people come into your business, they have to be able to have equal accommodations. And that's why we're coming to the Americans with Disabilities Act and kind of the gray area that has created a lot of litigation over the past 10.5 years since this happened, because the Department of Justice has not laid out clear-cut, defined parameters federally for what needs to happen for a website to be accessible for all. It kind of went back and forth, it seems like, for the first 6 years since 2010 between Congress and DOJ to determine who are going to establish these laws. And basically, we have federal laws that have been established via case law or lawsuits because the court's tired of waiting for the Department of Justice to enact these laws. So we've had thousands of lawsuits federally and thousands within the state of California because, again, we have the Unruh Act, which went into effect January 1 of 2018. Now, the interesting parts of the Unruh Act versus other state laws across the country is it comes with automatic punitive limits or minimums, let's say. So under the Unruh Act, if a person with disabilities sues a business owner over their website having obstacles, you must pay a minimum of $4,000 plus their attorney fees. And these are some documentations that, again, I have links to all of these in the resources at the end of the presentation that says there was a list of what types of businesses must follow these laws, but it says not limited to, if you see up here. And it's been kind of interesting over the past 2+ years that what types of businesses were sued. A lot of these lawsuits kind of went down the list. And at first it was a lot of hotels and motels, financial institutions, restaurants. And then ever since this Domino's decision, the gates have been opened and the businesses that are being sued have grown greatly. The number of lawsuits have grown greatly. And it's kind of interesting some of the things that have transpired just in the last 60 days in California. Now, this isn't just a United States or a California issue. 182 countries ratified and 164 signed the Convention on the Bill of Rights of Persons with Disabilities. So in January 1 of last year, laws went into effect in Canada. September 23rd of last year, laws went into effect in the UK. So this is a global initiative to make sure that everyone has access as similar as possible to everything on the internet. Now, what type of disabilities are we talking about? We're talking about people with visual impairments. So people that are blind, people that have very low vision, or people that are colorblind. Believe it or not, 9% of men are colorblind by the time we're 50. Another thing that women have an advantage on us with. We have people that have auditory issues, so deafness or just severe hearing impairments that we need to make sure that they have, again, same understandings of things that involve audio or things that are being said or versed on a website, on a video game, and whatnot. We have people with motor skill issues. So a lot of people that have, say, Parkinson's, muscular dystrophy, cerebral palsy, or a stroke, they may not be able to navigate a mouse like you or I would. So the website has to be built in a manner that you can navigate the entire website with the keyboard. Basically, your tab key turns into your pointer, like on the mouse, and your enter or return key turns into the clicker. So you can navigate an entire website, primary navigations with those two keys. Sometimes you may have to use an arrow or something like this down for certain tables or things within a website. But to get to the gist of the meat and the potatoes, if you will, of a website, you should be able to do it with just the tab and the enter keys. Now, this one kind of blew my mind when we first got into accessibility a few years ago. People with epilepsy, if you have something on a website that moves too quickly, it could actually induce a seizure. And I've always been a fan of having some motion or movement on a website. I surely hope that none of our movement ever created a seizure for someone with epilepsy. And now finally, cognitive issues. So people with learning disability, whether it be dyslexia, dyscalculia, other types of cognitive issues. This is covered in a couple of different ways. Sometimes people with some of those disabilities will actually use a screen reader, the same type of software that someone that's blind, because sometimes it's easier to comprehend the information verbally versus reading it. And then for some complex websites, the standard rule of thumb is to have a paragraph on a page that is at a 5th grade reading level to make sure, again, that we can disseminate information as much as possible to everyone that may be visiting the website. This is important because between 1 out of 5 and 1 out of 4 Americans has at least one form of a long-term disability. So if your website does not accommodate them, and 98% of websites currently do not, about 1 out of 4 to 1 out of 5 people may not be able to either A, consume information that's on the website, or B, actually conduct business and contact you to hire whomever they're trying to look for or whatever they're trying to purchase. So we have 4 main principles of, I think I skipped a slide. Give me 1 second here. There we go. We have what's called the Website Content Accessibility Guidelines. People may hear about this, especially if you're have seen any type of litigation, or what's called WCAG or WCAG. Now, the Website Content Accessibility Guidelines are the rules for making websites accessible. So where sometimes people may say, this is a gray area, you can't make a site 100% accessible, different things like this. It's not about making it 100% accessible. It's understanding what you have to do and when you need to do it. There are some times when you may have an obstacle or a barrier, if you will, on a website, but you have to accommodate someone with a disability. And then once you accommodate them, you may have something that they may not be able to digest or consume. But as long as you've given them the information prior, you can all still disseminate information in a way that's going to be effective for your business to someone that doesn't have disabilities. Now, the WCAG, or the Website Content Accessibility Guidelines, are created by a company called the World Wide Web Consortium, or they're referred to as W3C. And this is an organization that began back in 1994, and it's really the core of how to understand why things happen on the internet and how to create internet properties in a manner that's going to be the most effective and work the best with your browsers, with your search engines, and things of that nature. It's kind of interesting to take a look at, and some of the primary members of W3C just happen to be Google, Yahoo, Bing. So when you take a look at a lot of the information, the web standards that they've had for years, a lot of us have been using the W3C as a resource for a long time because they really help you understand how the web works. Now we have 11 easy steps to help make a website compliant. So these are some of the basics for different types of disabilities. So first and foremost, anytime you have something that's non-text, so an image, an icon, something like that, that's not decorative, we need to have what's called an alternative text or an alt text. So that's to paint a word picture. So if someone would see my screen here, they would know there's a man talking with a statue of a llama, maybe on a desk beside him, in a window in the corner. It doesn't have to depict every part of the image that they're seeing, but you need to be able to paint a decent word picture. For all forms on your website, they need to be labeled so that everyone can understand exactly what information you're looking for, so that it also works for a screen reader again. Any video has to be transcribed so that you have closed captioning, so that a deaf person knows what's going on in the video. To the extent of, if we're not talking, maybe you're playing music, maybe there's just nothing going on at the moment, we still need to provide them with the same interpretation that you and I have if we can hear properly, to know what's going on within the website. We have to make sure that we have enough color contrast. Again, 9% of men have color blindness by the time they're 50. If there's not enough color contrast, they can't see or interpret the content on the website. The best analogy I have of this is about 15 years ago, I was golfing with a neighbor of mine, and he was walking in a circle around a red golf tee on the tee box. And I just kind of looked at him and said, "Are you okay? What's going on?" Didn't realize that he was colorblind, and he had the most common form of color blindness, and it's hard to distinguish between red and green. I gave him some brown teas, thought we should just enjoy the rest of the day. Anytime you have a link on the website going somewhere, we need to make it descriptive. Because when someone's using a screen reader, if you can just imagine, the first thing they're going to hear on a picture is image. The first thing they're going to have here on a link is link. If you don't tell them what the picture is about or what the link is about, they're going to hear image, 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 link, link, link. We need to give them the same options determine, do they want to follow that link and go down the road that we've offered them for an option, or do they want to stay on the website? So we have to make sure that all these things work for everyone depending on what type of assistive device they're using. We can't use color only as an indication of meaning. And I'll show you an example of this here in a while, because if we're using color only and someone can't digest or can't comprehend color, then they're going to have a hard time understanding what we're trying to share with them. We need to have a minimum of 14 pixels for text on a website. It's 14 is the current rule. From a lot of the scuttlebutt we're hearing from W3C, I think they're going to be moving to 16. So we've already established and started making our minimum font size of 16 pixels. That way, should they change with WCAG rules 2.3, 2.4, we're already prepared for that. And we have to go back and charge customers to change a lot of font sizes on websites. Now, here's one that I see failing miserably on a lot of websites. It's if you have an input error on a form, does it identify and say exactly why there was an error? Is it a formatting issue for an address or a phone number? Is it something a formatting error for a website because they want the HTTP or the HTTPS? If you're requiring a certain format and someone makes an error, you need to tell them what the error was and how they need to fix it. As I mentioned earlier, you should be able to navigate the entire website using only keyboard. If you do have anything that's moving or any motion on a website, it needs to be able to be controlled or stopped. So if someone has epilepsy, it's not going to bother them. And you must be able to skip the navigation. And when you're using a keyboard and tabbing, it would be the second time they hit the tabs key once they come to a website, should allow them to skip all those buttons at the top of a page and go directly to the main content of a website. And this is another error that we see predominantly, because out of the box, most websites are built with a main header and a main content. And so if you just allow it to skip to main, it's going to go to the header first instead of the content. So we want people to be able to go directly to the content if they're using a keyboard, and especially a screen reader, so they can start digesting the information. So as I mentioned earlier, with color contrast, this would be a pie chart or an indication of something that we would see quite often when we're sharing information. But this is depending on the level of color blindness, what they may see. So if we're wanting to say that there's an information that we're trying to share that 58%, 23%, 10%, 9%, because we're trying to share how we came up with this pie chart, we want to have that on there so that if they can't see the color, they can still associate the parts of the pie chart with the rest of the information that we're trying to disseminate. Here's the bad part about this. A company called WebAIM has done what they call the WebAIM Million. And they did this in February of 2019 and again in February of 20. I haven't heard if they've so far shared the information if they did this again last month. So in 2019, they tested 1 million home pages. And in those 1 million home pages, 97.8% of them were not accessible. When they tested them again in 2020, we went from 97.8 to 98.1. So we actually went backwards on whether or not these home pages were accessible to everybody, regardless of ability or disability. The reason why most of these websites do not work properly are the way that screen readers are built. JAWS is the most commonly sold and definitely the most commonly referenced screen reader with regards to lawsuits. NB Access is probably the second. And then you have a lot that are built into different devices, whether it be your phone or your computer. Well, the way a lot of these screen readers are built, they're built with different form of HTML than 99% of people use when they're building websites. So you have to understand how to code things differently using codes referenced like ARIA, semantic HTML, and things like this, so that you can make the website work properly from every type of disability, and especially for the screen readers. And here's the problem we run into is some people are developers and they understand code. I understand enough of it to get by to fix something. I'm not a person that studied code, for my education. A lot of people working with websites in the world are marketers that I fall into. I just took the time to learn and understand this, because when you're just trying to build something from a theme that you may hear about, or a template or a skin, if you don't understand how to do this and edit those things yourself or build them properly, you're going to end up using what are called overlays. And you may have seen some of these different icons on websites. Anytime you see one of these icons on a website, this is someone that understands that they need to do something with accessibility. Unfortunately, the problem is these icons, these overlays don't make the website accessible. We're seeing websites that are sued every week with these overlays on them. And we have clients that are coming to us every month that are kind of frustrated because they had a false sense of security and thought the solution that the person working with them on their website provided for them would protect them and make their website work for people with disabilities. Unfortunately, the only way to make the website work properly is at the code level so that it can work with all these different types of assistive devices. This was 2 years ago, and I want to share this with you because, again, this was right around the time that the Unruh Act went into effect, and it showed that the lawsuits between New York and California were pretty similar. And then once you got past New York, California, and Florida, those were probably 90 to 95% of the lawsuits. Since Unruh went into effect in 2018, and since the Domino's decision, we have seen a litany of lawsuits in California through state and federal courts, and a lot of other states around the country have started filing these lawsuits. And all of these lawsuits are based upon where the disabled person is. We've literally worked with people in California now that have been sued out of Pennsylvania. We've worked with companies that have been sued out of California that are in Texas. So it just depends on where the disabled person is, and that's where the litigation is going to start, and that's where you're going to have to hire an attorney in to help resolve this issue. If you want to know a few companies that have been sued over the last 60 days, we have Daiso Japan, Pure CBD, Lost Coast Brewery, Glassdoor, Just Answer, California Donuts, Burger City Grill, and a dentist that has pulled their website down. So I couldn't pull their logo yesterday when I was putting the slides together. They went to the extreme of completely taking down their website. So as you can see, what types of businesses are being sued is whomever the different plaintiff attorneys and plaintiffs are suing. It's kind of all over the board. So there's not really anyone that's safe anymore. Actually, a year ago, either this month or next month, a mom's blog was sued. So any type of business can be sued with the exception of churches. So some facts: we have over 1 billion people worldwide have some form of a disability. 253 million people have a vision impairment, and 19 million children worldwide have a visual impairment. Now, some of the reasons why and the benefits of making your website work for people with disabilities is right now we have about 64 million people in the US with at least one disability, and over a third of them are of the working age. So that means in the US, we have over $490 billion worth of disposable income. And with about 10% of the people in the US and California, we can move that decimal point in one place and say we have about $49 billion worth of disposable income of people with disabilities in the state of California. We have over $21 billion worth of discretionary income, or over $2 billion in the state of California. So when you make a website that works properly and doesn't exclude 20 to 25% of the consumer base, it will bring more customers in your door and more revenue to your business. Now, the best part about this is when the Americans with Disabilities Act started back in 1990, along the way, they created a small business credit that every CPA I've spoken to said this can be associated with your website as well. So whether you make your business or your website accessible and removing barriers, federally, once you spend $250 each year on accessibility, you can qualify for up to a 50 cents on the dollar tax credit on the next $10,000 you spend if you have less than 30 full-time employees or less than $1 million in revenue, which we all know in California, $1 million in revenue is easy to obtain for a lot of small businesses, but we do run into quite a few that have less than 30 full-time employees. So it's either or. There's also a small California tax credit For the same size business, it's $125. So it basically covers that first $250 that you're spending each year. So at least they've seen that this is an obstacle that small businesses shouldn't have to encounter on their own and a burden. So at least the government is helping out small businesses to obtain accessibility. Here's a lot of this information came from all these links here. So I'm happy to share this with you. You can do a little bit of research if you like. Again, my name is Glenn Ingram. I own Web Search Pros. I have my website, I have an email address up there, a LinkedIn profile, as well as my YouTube channel where I try and post a few videos each week just to try and help educate and inform businesses about accessibility and other types of compliance rules. One thing real quick is to share with you is January 1st, a year ago, the California Consumer Privacy Act also clicked in that you must, depending on the size of your business and interpretation of the law, share terms, conditions, privacy policies, and let people know if you're tracking their data or anything like that. So that's going to be something more fined through the state than sued about. But either the Secretary of State or the Attorney General, one mentioned last summer, fall, that they were going to start enforcing that. So we do have more compliance issues than accessibility. It's just the lawsuits have been kind of growing at a great pace over the last 3 or 4 years here in California.
Great. Well, Glenn, thank you. That was kind of eye-opening on my side in a couple different ways. I really appreciate the information, and I know everybody else does. Got a few questions. First one is, what advice do you have for a small business restaurant with very limited funds to do for their website? Is there a simple fix, or do they have to contract a website compliance specialist? And if so, how much can it cost to make a site compliant?
Yes, there are no quick fixes. Any quick fixes that someone shares with them is, again, like these overlays or these plugins that are a false sense of security. The only way to make the business or website accessible is to work with a specialist that understands how to code it. One thing that we've started doing personally is offering kind of like I hate contracts typically as business from a web design or marketing company, but we can either show people how you can pay for it and own it at one point and then pay for someone to help to maintain it, or we can put everything together into a monthly payment with an agreement that's going to be similar amount of money out of your pocket, but to make it easier for them to cash flow it. And the main thing to keep in mind with this is, as an example, there was a restaurant that opened up in Long Beach, 2019, fall of 2019. They didn't make it open for 3 months because in their first 60 days, they were sued over accessibility of their restaurant and accessibility of their website. So when you look at this as an expense, the average lawsuit for a restaurant in California right now for accessibility is between $8,000 and $12,000. And they have been a target of certain serial plaintiffs have targeted restaurants. So when you look at it as an expense, I'm going to say it's going to be a lot more expensive to get sued because then you have to hire someone to fix it right, or you're going to get sued again. I've met one restaurateur that was sued 3 times in 3 years before he found someone that understood how to do this right. And so that's going to cost more money. And when you do this, a lot of times, a lot of restaurant websites that haven't been built properly by people that know how to do it, they've used some different builders because they're inexpensive, like a Wix, a Squarespace, a GoDaddy builder. These platforms don't work well with Google. They're just a way to give someone a good brochure, if you will. The best example is we took one of those platforms for someone that wanted to avoid the litigation and be proactive because a lot of restaurants in their city were being sued last year. Within about 10 days to 2 weeks, they went from not being on the top 10 pages of Google for their type of restaurant to being number 1. So again, you may invest a little bit more money, but your return off that investment will definitely pay dividends because if you look at their history, they had never had more than about 1,000 people a month to their website. And before the last shutdown in November, they had 25,000 people visit their website. So they spend a little bit of money, but they're definitely getting a lot more business from that.
Okay, so when you say a little bit of money, what would be just a ballpark average to have a website brought up, like say if it wasn't compliant, or just to have it gone through to make sure it is compliant?
It depends on the size of the website and what needs to happen, because a restaurant's a good example. A lot of restaurants have menus and PDFs. PDFs don't work for screen readers. An example of this is the Liquid Lounge had a very simple website, but they were sued simply over their menu PDF. So they may spend between $3,000 and $4,000 to fix this, and a couple $100 a month to help maintain it, so that as they change their menus, as they update things to your website, they don't make the mistake of doing what a lot of people have done before, is make the website accessible, then they add something to it themselves, and now all of a sudden they're not accessible.
Gotcha.
So you spend a few $1,000s on this, but again, it's half of that's going to kind of be in a upfront payment that you'll get back from Uncle Sam next year when they file their taxes.
Okay.
And those credits are year to year under the section they're at with IRS law. So each year they can get those credits. It's not just a one-time thing.
Okay. Okay. Good to know. Now, can the web designer be held liable if the website is not compliant?
Yes, in the form of two different answers. There have been some businesses that were upset and then went back and sued their developer over this. And then there have been some of these plaintiffs that realized, if I can get a minimum of $4,000 and am settling for 8 to 12, well, why not double dip and sue you as a business owner and me as the developer? And by suing both of us, now they're going to double up on the revenue. So yes, they can be.
Okay. So back to that comment right there. So the minimum penalty is $4,000, and you said the
Plus
average
attorney fees.
Plus attorney fees, and you said the average is about 8 to 12,000 that a business would normally be sued for.
Depends on the size of your business. We're seeing
Okay.
restaurants, podiatrists, chiropractors, smaller businesses around that size, they're settling for 8 to 12. We're
Okay.
seeing this typical settlement for an e-commerce website. So someone that has a store online where they're selling something, being 30 to 50 right now. And we're seeing big companies like Ralph Lauren was just sued last month. The same plaintiff sued Ralph Lauren, a few different grocery stores like Marshall's, different stores like that. And those ones we're seeing settlements of over 6 figures.
Wow. Okay. So I know you touched base on W3C, and are they the sole policer of compliance?
They're not the police, they're the ones that have established the rules. So
Okay, they established the rules. So okay. So who polices it?
I'm sorry?
So W3C establishes the guidelines and kind of the rules. Who polices it? Is it just the patron going to the website that is knowledgeable and says, hey, this isn't correct, that type of thing?
Yes, there have been some lawsuits, and especially early on, that have been brought on by like Institute of the Blind, different things like that for people that are deaf. So sometimes you'll have them involved, but typically it's going to be your law firms and your plaintiffs that are going out and looking for sites that are not accessible.
Okay. Why is it only churches that are exempt?
When they started this up, years ago, there's churches are not, I think we're exempt, I believe, from the original American with Disabilities Act. So I think that's why it's extrapolated over. But yeah, that's been the only exception that I've heard of as a church.
Huh, interesting. Okay. So what would you say is the most common misconception about website compliance?
That you can get this little piece of code to put on your website and it's going to fix everything. And let's just look at this in the form of artificial intelligence and reality. I mean, if you have a colored text and a different colored background, for it to change the codes on these a little bit, because you just have to have slight difference and different variations sometimes to be able to have enough color contrast so that people can read it. For artificial intelligence to go through and kind of describe the image behind you with the file cabinets and the desktop and stuff like this. Are there technologies out there available? Yes, but the technologies that are available, they've spent millions of dollars on. So if someone spent millions of dollars in R&D, is it something you're going to be able to buy for $40 or $40 a month or something like that? And what we see with some of these that have even gotten closer to being able to do it is they only work if there's no alt text on an image. Well, you have a lot of people in my industry that have been doing optimization for years that have had a misperception that an alt tag will help you rank. And so they'll stuff SEO phrases or what they're trying to rank for in this alt tag. So some of the ones that will actually provide a form of an alt tag, if there's nothing there, it doesn't override an existing one. So there are just so many little I's to dot and T's to cross when you're working accessibility that none of the soft pieces of software like that have been effective, because we're seeing companies every week in California with one of them on their website being sued. because there are a lot of tests you can do, and all of these automated tests will get you about 40 to 50% of the way there. The only way to truly know if a site's accessible is to manually test it, like you were using a screen reader. Test it with a screen reader and test it. The best way is to have people with disabilities actually do the testing, if a customer has a budget for that. If they don't, having one of us that understands how to do it is the next best thing to test it as if though we had the same disability.
I see. Okay. Yeah, that's very helpful. Thank you for that. Now, when it comes to a website, and nowadays everybody having, whether it be a desktop, a laptop, a tablet, a phone, something of that nature, and that responsiveness of that website, is that key to accessibility and compliance, having that? And can you explain a little bit about that mobile accessibility and a responsive website and how important that is?
Sure. It's one of those things, and I hate to say negative things about people, but lazy developers have done this. I mean, since we've been doing this for the last decade, we've never built a site that wasn't responsive. There wasn't ever a reason to do that. So what's important is about half of searches we're seeing right now are done on a mobile device. If your website's not built properly, like you were saying there, to adjust to based on the screen you have. So I mean, literally, it's going to change if your phone is landscape or portrait. So we need to make sure that it's built properly to respond. A, for usability. B, because 2 years ago, Google changed the way they index websites to what they call mobile first. Because a lot of people were putting a Band-Aid on a website and creating a little mobile version of that was different than their desktop version. But with Google seeing the big change, if you will, or migration to people doing a lot more searching on their phones, that they went to the mobile first way. So whatever shows up on the mobile phone is what they indexed, and the content that they used to base off how you ranked. So it really makes a big difference on how you appear on Google, because we all know most of your searches are clicked on a business on the first page of Google. You know, it's an old poor developer's joke that the best place to hide a dead body is on the second page of Google, because no one will ever go there. So you have to make sure it works there for Google as well as your phone. And some of the most recent versions of WCAG iterations, when they went from 2.0 to 2.1 and then 2.2 this last fall, have been new rules associated with mobile devices, apps, and whatnot.
Very good. No, that's extremely helpful. I think a lot of people aren't really aware of how important that is to have your site be responsive for multiple devices.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, I'm going to ask if anybody else has any questions right now to please put them into the chat room or the Q&A. While we see if anybody has any more questions, I'd just like to remind people that we do have a few other events coming up here at the Escondido Chamber of Commerce. Next Wednesday on the 17th, we have our Rising Star Student Scholarships Awards for the month of March, and that will be on the 17th at 9 a.m. Fantastic program. Please join us for that. We will have our Wake Up Escondido event on Friday the 26th at 8 a.m. That will be hosted by Mr. David Zumaya. We'll once again be talking about digital marketing in 2021. And then I would like to also mention a very important event we have coming up in April. We have our 23rd annual Chamber Challenge Golf Tournament, Monday, April 12th. That will be at the Vineyard Golf Course here in Escondido. We're proud to partner this year, this time around, with the California Center for the Arts and the Escondido Police Athletic League. Proceeds will be benefiting all three of our organizations. And with the Center for the Arts involved, we're going to be having some really fun art-themed things happening. So please join us for our events. I'd like to once again thank Mr. Glenn Ingram, owner and founder of Web Search Pros, for joining us this morning discussing website compliance laws and some of the things happening here in California. And I can't say goodbye without saying congratulations to Mr. James Roten on his grandchild, and hope all is well. Glenn, thank you. We hope to have you back again. Feel free to let us know as things get updated. I'll remind everybody the webinar was recorded this morning. It will be on our YouTube channel and on our website. Glenn, thank you, and hope to see you again soon.
Thank you. I'd be happy to come back anytime you will have me.
Wonderful. Thanks, Glenn. Everybody have a wonderful day. Thanks for joining us for our March Economic Development meeting. Have a wonderful day.